Hey everyone, how you doing? Eric Hörst back with another episode of Training Café number 56, and I think this could be the best episode ever. I see good 6 or 8 questions already typed in, some really good questions that I'll get to in just a bit. But first, we have a couple things to take care of. Number 1 on the list is our sip of coffee together. So if you've got a cup of coffee or another beverage, raise it up. Let's commune together. Climbers around the world unite. Coffee. Can never get enough coffee. Until about 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Then I cut it off just so I can sleep at night. But before 3 p.m., I'm all about the coffee. So hopefully we have a clear video and good audio here. I got the mic on in the right spot, I hope. And we will proceed here with the next item on the list, and that is the shout out for some notable accomplishment in the last couple of weeks. And just a few days ago, an American boulderer named Allison Vest sent a boulder in Utah called Show Your Scars, V14. So that's an impressive send for sure for any climber, but it puts Allison, at near the pretty top of the female bouldering list because that's a stout ascent, and she's climbing strong on routes as well. I know she did a couple of 14As last summer at Wild Iris, like throwing the Holy Hand, and I think Rodeo Free Europe routes I know well. Not because I climbed them, but because I played my sons on them when they did those routes a few years ago. So Allison's climbing super strong. That's awesome to see. Main topic today, as you know, relates to age and how that affects training and climbing performance. There are some significant changes as I have lived through, and you will live through if you stay in climbing long enough. But you can still train hard and climb at a high level, through your 40s, into your 50s, and if you stay healthy and motivated, even into your 60s. There's a couple of climbers here in the United States, and certainly more than a couple in Europe, in Spain, let's say, that, gentlemen in their 60s that are climbing 8B plus, and, certainly people in their 50s climbing 8C, 8C plus, middle 514. So it can be done, but it takes, a confluence of a lot of factors to be at that level at that age. Number 1 is you need to still be motivated to train and climb hard and to sacrifice, it takes discipline to put in the time, the effort to eat right, to train right. It takes a little bit of luck, when it comes to injury, your injury history over all those years, kind of is accumulating. That's something I've experienced, knee injuries, elbow, shoulder, finger. None of them, for me, thankfully, have been debilitating, have taken me out of the game, but, those injuries accumulate and are a concern and can potentially take you out of the game. But I know one gentleman who's a few years older than me, lifelong climber, had a hip replacement just 2 seasons ago, and I wondered, geez, how is that going to change things for him? Because he had done a few 514s in his late 50s. Could he return to that grade after hip replacement? And the answer is yes. He's climbing 13 plus. I imagine he'll do 14 again soon, even in his early 60s. So that's awesome to see. Kind of where there's a will, there may be a way. Now, some of the things, and I imagine most people watching this, Training Cafe are perhaps in the 20s and 30s or 40s. There's fewer and fewer climbers as I get older. I see fewer and fewer people of my generation still out at the crags, but they're still there. There are some, and you go to the gyms and you see quite a few older people, middle-aged climbers, and it is a sport that even if you're not climbing at a high level, you can still glean a lot of enjoyment. I I will continue to climb even when I can't feel like I'm pushing my limit or, challenging myself on hard routes, because there's still this intrinsic value to climbing of how it makes you feel, mentally, physically, emotionally. It's very pleasurable, that zone that you get in, the flow state, when you're climbing at your limit and focused on just the next hold in front of you, and nothing else in the world matters or is even present in your mind. It's a super pleasurable state, and it's something that I think attracts a lot of us to climbing. And so I will climb as long as I can get my harness on and get to the crag or get to the gym. But yes, we want to feel, many of us enjoy pushing ourselves, and if you're watching this video, you are likely involved in training and seeking the higher levels of performance. And so things do change. You get into your 30s, and I'm thinking back, I was just as strong in my 30s as I was in my 20s, but certainly recovery starts to slow down just a tad. 40s, it slows down further, 50s even more. Really, the 50s was where it was game-changing for me. And by the way, I turn 58 next Monday, February 14th. I turn 58. And, the last 8 years, really since starting into my, I guess it would be 6th decade that I am in, the changes have been more profound in terms of slowed recovery, also a slowed metabolism. When I was in my 20s, I could eat anything I wanted, it seemed. I didn't have the most healthful diet back then, but still I was lean and mean. With each passing decade, without a doubt, my metabolism slows down. For many folks, that's kind of the norm. And plus, as you get older, because of family and career, you lose time to be active. So some of that is a reduced activity level each decade as you get older. Less time out doing other sports, running, skiing, biking, the things you might do in, beyond climbing reduce. As your time shrinks, your available time shrinks, you end up just being active when you climb. That's how it's been for me. I ski once or twice a year, and I really don't engage in any other sporting activities other than climbing. So my activity all revolves around either climbing or training for climbing. And so that diminished time training, reduces your calorie burn per day. And so that, along with, the things that go along with aging, reduced testosterone level, your various hormones, your thyroid level will often change as you get older, and all these things slow down metabolism, slow down recovery, slow down muscle protein synthesis. So things you can do to kind of help elevate naturally would be a good thing. Now, certainly there are more dramatic interventions, for older people, athletes, like testosterone replacement therapy and HGH, and there are certainly people that go there. I know in Hollywood there's a lot that do it just for their looks, but also maybe in athletics, people aging out in their sport, wanting to stay strong a little longer. It would be probably cheating in most sports to do some pharmaceutical intervention like that, but there are older athletes, bodybuilders and such that do that stuff. And I hope to never have to go there. I am totally, not in need of that now. I have been able to take enough interventions throughout my 50s to keep me, functional in terms of a hard training, hard climbing person. But I think some people go too quickly. And, once you start doing, say, testosterone replacement therapy, it's a commitment for life, and it's not cheap. it's a monthly investment for the rest of your life, because your body's production ceases when you begin to take it. And same thing if you take steroids or any other thing like that. There are unintended consequences that will have negative effects. For one, and a big one to worry about as an older person, if there's any little bit of cancer in your body somewhere getting started that you're not aware of, HGH, testosterone would accelerate that. And so it might help you out in the short run. It might bring an end to your life more quickly in one of those scenarios. So there are a lot of things to consider, and trying, therefore, to train and eat and supplement healthfully, I think, is the ticket for middle-aged climbers in their 40s and 50s and 60s. And, maybe at some day you'll need to go another route and, make a educated decision with a doctor who knows this stuff in those areas. But I don't want to go there anytime soon, and hopefully not need to at all. Let me just go down a few things that I have been thinking about, that I had to kind of change, as I got into my 40s and 50s, to help me stay fit and healthy and keep my body fat where I wanted, and, keep my strength. And, by the way, on a good day, my finger strength and my pulling strength is pretty darn close to where it was in my 30s. Training smarter, better training protocols, perhaps better nutrition, certainly more rest. I don't train as much as I did in my 30s. At least I don't train in the same ways. Maybe my time investment could actually be about the same, but I don't do as much high intensity training, because it takes longer to recover from. And so you need to be more aware of your training. I keep really meticulous notes I keep a written journal of all of my workouts, and can really see when I'm falling behind and accumulating fatigue and not recovering, and take time off, take a deload week, dial things back until I get back to peak form. And when I am in that peak shape, when I do a finger force metric test, it's pretty darn close to where I was 20 years ago. So that's a good thing. But I don't have as many days with that peak finger force that I had back then. That's the difference. And so, I have to, at the Crags, really plan out those days where I know I'm 100%, try to send my route on those days. Really be a planner when it comes to those things. But in terms of adjustments in middle age, it starts with your mindset. Obviously you have to believe it's possible. You have to be motivated and disciplined, willing to sacrifice. As I get into climbing season, one thing I sacrifice, I really enjoy one beer or one glass of wine with dinner. And during my winter season, I have that more often, when I'm kind of at home in training mode. Then when I get into performance season and I'm traveling, I might reduce myself to just one drink per week. Because I really see an impact in terms of, the alcohol for me tends to go to body fat, and I don't feel good the next day. I'm not quite as sharp for a climbing performance. There's evidence that alcohol in high doses slows muscle protein synthesis, so I don't want to do anything to slow down muscle protein synthesis. And so I make some adjustments. I enjoy pastries. Again, maybe I do a little more pastry action with my coffee in the winter training mode than in my summer climbing mode. So, discipline on diet, discipline on training, on rest days, all those things. As you get older, you have to really care. You have to really want to perform better, to train harder, to climb harder, to make those sacrifices. In terms of exercise, I think as you get older, certainly one of my goals every day is to do some type of physical exercise. Now, it's not always climbing specific. In fact, only 4 days a week is it really climbing specific. I do, 2 days a week where I do 2-a-day training, where I have a morning and an evening climbing workout. So that's twice a week. And then 2 other days a week, I have a single climbing workout. And then the other days when I'm not climbing, I may do some antagonist training, but I also run. I do a couple days a week of running, or I go out and do run-walk intervals. If I'm short on time, I'll go out for just 15 minutes, I'll jog, and then I'll do some sprint intervals where I sprint for 30 to 60 seconds and then I walk for 60 seconds. And that's a great way to consume a lot of oxygen, to really get your heart rate up. It's kind of not exactly a Tabata protocol, but it has the same kind of effect in terms of being very time effective for cardiovascular training, and it does get your metabolism up. So I do something every single day to elevate the metabolism. Otherwise, I just have a naturally slow metabolism where I think if I'm just totally sedentary and working for a day, I don't think I burn more than 2,000 calories. So it's really easy to go over on calories if you're only burning 2,000 a day. And so again, it's easier to pack on body fat as you get older. There's just no doubt about it. So something every day to elevate your heart rate, to get you to breathe heavy, I think is a really good thing. And it could be something as simple as just going out for a jog, or getting on a treadmill, or going for a bike ride, or something like that. It doesn't have to be climbing. Though I think you do need to do a lot of climbing, obviously, to stay climbing fit, addressing all three energy systems, having a couple days of volume climbing in a gym where you do laps on routes. Climbing 500 to 1,000 feet of submaximal routes is great for the aerobic energy system, but then having a couple days a week where you're doing bouldering and maybe a little bit of hangboarding. And perhaps if you're strong enough and healthy enough through the shoulders, a little bit of campusing. Though dynamic exercises, as you get older, you must be very, very careful, because the accumulated wear and tear, especially in the tendons, it's not uncommon for 50-something athletes of any sport to tear bicep tendons, rotator cuff tendons, because of not something they did on any given day, but the accumulated wear and tear and the degeneration of the collagen, over decades, abuse, overtraining accumulated over decades. You got away with it through your 30s and 40s, but it comes home to roost in your 50s in the form of an acute injury. And so you got to be very careful with the dynamic exercises, that's for sure. But there's no reason you can't do heavy training that is appropriate for you. And I still do weighted pull-ups and weighted fingerboarding, and some weighted bouldering and some weighted, tread wall climbing with a 16-pound weight belt on. I do all of that in appropriate doses. Again, trying to stress each week all three energy systems. Nutrition, massively important for a middle-aged athlete. I think it's important for an athlete of any age, because you could do all this hard work in the gym and at the crag, but then you're eating crap food, you're drinking tons of alcohol, you're not drinking enough water, you're not getting enough protein, you're not getting enough of essential vitamins and minerals. All have negative effects in your body in terms of recovery and muscle protein synthesis, and your ability to get the most out of the time you invest into your training, and to be able to climb the best you can climb when you go to the crag. And so at any age, I think it's helpful to think about what you're consuming and to study it and become a little more knowledgeable about what is needed. Climbers are very unique athletes, and even within climbing, if you're a boulder specialist versus a route specialist versus a big wall climber, the nutritional needs are different for all three of those people. The amount of calories you burn is less as a boulderer and highest as like a big wall multi-pitch climber. Sport climbing somewhere in between. There's many factors that go into it. How much protein you need, and I don't want to go off on a tangent, but it's important to recognize the role that nutrition plays, and you can't just read a generalized nutrition book for athletes and follow it, because the guidelines won't be specific to a climber. And same thing, there's a lot of knowledgeable nutritionists out there that have never coached an elite level climber and don't really know the subtleties that are needed. The importance of strength to weight ratio for higher level climbing, and the diet that's right for supporting that. And so It's just as you are following these podcasts and reading other resources to become more knowledgeable on training techniques and strategies, there is still, I think for most climbers, something to be learned about diet and nutrition. When during the day to consume carbohydrates, how much protein to consume each day. But as you get older, I think it's even more important to have that stuff dialed in. And really, many of you are aware that I have a company called PhysiVantage that was born, 3 or 4 years ago, and we're the leading climbing-specific nutritional company in the United States, and I believe the world. And by the way, we now have European distribution, I'm proud to say, through Epic TV's big online store. So European viewers, you can now get PhysiVantage from the Epic TV shop. But that company was born out of, when I turned 50, I started to really do a drill down and look at research for strength and power athletes, and especially for middle-aged athletes, and looking for clues of what things could keep me in the game and keep me stronger. And it led me to the research on use of hydrolyzed collagen and how to enrich it and enhance it with vitamin C and BCAAs to make it even more effective, which is what I did with my flagship product, Supercharged Collagen. It is a very useful training-specific supplement for climbers, our fingers, our elbows, our shoulders. And I won't get into the use of that product, but if you visit physivantage.com, there's significant research, and there's hundreds of 5-star reviews from climbers who have used the product daily and found it to be game-changing in terms of finger health and recovery from injury and recovery from workouts. And so, that research led me to developing products, really inventing products from scratch for climbers based on science and the climbing science of performance. And that's where PhysiVantage was very organically born. I didn't set out to start a company, but that's where I ended up at. And here 5 years later, we're quite a large and growing company with 7 products and more in the works in research and development that I'll tell you about in the future. And even if you don't, go down the path of investigating PhysiVantage, I think there are just some basic things like vitamin D is so important. Research has shown that the majority of people don't get enough vitamin D. Even people that live in sunny climates don't make enough vitamin D. Same with magnesium. Our soil is depleted of minerals, and especially magnesium is something that 70% of people today are deficient on. And those are 2 very important things. Vitamin D is required for testosterone production in your body. So if you're low on D, you're going to be low on testosterone, perhaps low in red blood cell count. I would recommend, as I do, you get your vitamin D levels checked every year. It's a simple blood test, costs about $50, and you can see where you're at. But if in doubt, take vitamin D, 1,000 IUs every day. As a minimum dose. I actually take about 5,000 IUs every other day. And even something like creatine monohydrate, while climbers should not be megadosing or loading creatine like maybe a power lifter or football player would, because it will add weight. It adds a lot of water weight. Your muscles get bigger and they volumize and they get heavier, and you actually pump out more quickly because your capillaries get squeezed by that volumization of your muscles. So you don't want to go there, but a microdose, 2 or 3 or at most 4 grams of creatine a day, it's kind of what you would get if you ate 2 pieces of lean steak a day. You would get from the steak that creatine. Now, I eat 1 piece of red meat a week, so I'm not getting much creatine in my diet. And if you're vegan, you get virtually no creatine in your diet. And for a climber, getting that megadose every day can be quite helpful. It's good, for muscle recovery and even for brain function. We add a low dose of creatine into all of our proteins. The PhysiVantage PowerPlex vegan protein, which is plant-based, but it's fortified with a small amount of creatine and beta-alanine, and our whey protein, which, by the way, this is our new flavor, Strawberry Blast of weapons-grade whey. It is delicious. It's my new favorite workout protein, post-workout protein, and it has a small dose of creatine in it, just enough to help the process of recovery, not enough, not so much that it's going to cause unwanted weight gain due to water and such. And beta-alanine I mentioned briefly. I do have a small jar of beta-alanine that I take, and I saw a question here about beta-alanine that had come in, so I might as well answer that right now. Beta-alanine stores inside your working muscle cells as a buffer. It's the first line of defense for buffering hydrogen ions that are created from anaerobic glycolysis, which we have a lot of that when you're bouldering hard, climbing hard, and getting pumped. Anaerobic glycolysis is generating a lot of the ATP, and it's splitting off all these hydrogen ions that lower the pH inside the muscle cells and ultimately have an effect of shutting down muscle function as you lose homeostasis. The brain, as a protective mechanism, shuts you down. And so taking beta-alanine daily, it's not something you can take once a week and get any, there are some pre-workouts that say, do this before your workout, take the beta-alanine, and it will make a difference. It does not. It has to be loaded. And fortunately, when you load the beta-alanine, it doesn't cause a weight gain like the creatine does. It does not draw extra water into the cell. So there's no side effect of weight gain from consuming beta-alanine. There is a side effect of paresthesia, which is a tingling that you get that lasts about an hour after you take a scoop of it. And some people can't deal with it. Other people get used to it and don't even notice it after a while. But if you take 3 grams twice a day, which is what I do a 3-gram little tiny scoop of beta-alanine in my morning collagen. I add it to that, and I do another little 3-gram scoop into my evening or bedtime protein. And that's enough to, if I'm doing it every day, 7 days a week, you have to do it to get a beneficial effect. You can't do it once or twice a week and have any benefit. But if you do, it allows you to maintain that anaerobic glycolysis, and your strength and power endurance improves a little bit. It's not game-changing, but the research that has been done, there's only one very small research study in climbers, but there's a number of larger studies done in other power endurance sports like rowing and cycling and running. And if you take the beta-alanine daily, it can potentially improve your power endurance by 2, 3, 4%, which, for a beginner or intermediate level climber probably wouldn't be noticeable. But for a more advanced climber, absolutely that 2 or 3% could be game changing. If you're climbing at your limit and falling 1 bolt from the chains, or falling off 2 moves from the top of your boulder problem because you're pumped out, that couple of percent of extra power endurance can be a difference maker. And by the way, PhysiVantage Endurex, which that product does not have any beta-alanine in it. I didn't want to go there with that product. It wasn't the goal of that product, but it has a high dose of citrulline malate and a moderate dose of beetroot extract, which are both vasodilators, and they also have a positive effect on mitochondria function, both of which get the aerobic energy system more engaged when you're climbing, when you're training. And so when you are doing pumpy exercises or pumpy climbing, the more you can get that aerobic energy system involved by way of better blood flow, better oxygen kinetics in the mitochondria, the more ATP you can generate from that aerobic energy system, you reduce the need for anaerobic glycolysis. And in doing so, reduce the hydrogen ion production and reduce the drop in pH inside the cells that ultimately brings about an end of exercise. And so the bottom line is the Endurex, by getting the oxidative system higher functioning, extends endurance. So it does so via a different pathway, a totally different mechanism than the beta-alanine does. And that's why I do both. I do the Endurex, which, by the way, you don't load that. You just consume it during your warm-up, and then it has an acute effect. The beta-alanine does not have an acute effect, so that is something you have to consume every day, and you have to load it into your system. But together, it's possible you're getting a 5 or 6 or 7% increase in endurance, which is what, the type of climbing I do is mostly endurance climbing, steep stuff like that. And it's really been helpful for me the last few seasons to use those two nutritional interventions. As performance supplements, the protein is more about recovery and the collagen is more about tendon recovery and injury prevention. So it's kind of having a whole nutritional strategy, which includes a lot of good foods, but also a lot of good supplements. And so those are all things that I'm not saying everybody needs, but the higher your commitment, the higher your goals, the more important pulling all the levers is to, help you perform your best, recover your best, and hopefully dodge injury. Okay, so I think I've kind of covered this topic. I haven't really got into specifics of training. That needs to be personalized anyway, but kind of my bottom line on the physical training side of things is in your 40s and 50s, you don't have to train all that different than you did in your 20s and 30s. You can still do pretty much all the exercises, but you have to be more cautious with the power exercises like campus training. And maybe when in doubt, don't even do them. There are some days that I just know I am not there 100% and ready to do a campus exercise. So why do it and risk a shoulder injury or something that could take me out of the game? So you have to be very mature and prudent with your training decisions, but there's no exercise that you just have to take off the list. And again, doing some type of exercise every day I think is really, really important to keep your body, your metabolism up and your body active and engaged. The heart, we want to keep our heart strong as we age. Keeping that resting heart rate down is a good, the lower your resting heart rate, the better sign of your cardiovascular fitness. And so running a few days a week does that, and that will certainly be a good health sign and a good thing for your climbing conditioning as well. I guess the final thing is warm-ups have to be longer and longer as you get older. I did an interview with John Gill, the legendary boulderer, like 25 years ago. I've met John a few times over the years. He was one of my idols as a younger climber. He's in his 80s, I guess maybe mid or upper 80s now, and he's retired in Colorado. But in any case, the interview I did with him 25 years ago, he was like the age I am now. And I remember him saying that, it takes him so long to warm up that some days he's only getting warmed up when he has to leave the boulders or leave, his training. In other words, it took him a long time, to get warmed up and turned on. And I didn't get it at the time because I was in I might have been 28 or 30 at the time. And so that didn't even register. I couldn't comprehend it. But now I totally comprehend it. Is that, I head down to my home gym or I head out to the crag at the Red River Gorge. I need an hour, a very slow progressive warm up over an hour that involves climbing, getting the blood flowing. It involves doing some hangs to get the nervous system turned on. Get the joints lubricated and tendons lubricated, and it's a long process. I can't just show up at the boulders or cliff or gym and start climbing like I might have 20 or 30 years ago. And so the older you get, warm-up's important for everybody, but the older you get, the more crucial it is for you to climb your best and to reduce your injury risk. Okay, so enough there. I want to move on to answer the questions because I see quite a few typed in here, and I don't want to go over 1 hour of time, which is kind of my self-imposed constraint here. So let's get rolling on the questions. First question is, what do you do on a scheduled training for climbing day if you have horrible skin? Yeah, and that is a problem for some people, skin wear. And so obviously you don't want to do any bouldering on small holds or hangboarding on 6mm edges. But on those bad skin days, maybe it's, you can do things like pull-ups on a bar. You could do a max strength pull-up workout, one-arm pull-ups, assisted one-arms. Obviously, if you don't even want to do arm type exercises, it could be a core training day, it could be a running day, it could be an antagonist training day where you're just using some light free weights and exercise bands. And so there's a lot of stuff you can do to feel like you're not just taking the day off because of your bad skin. But to look for, I don't really have a trick to like fix the bad skin so that you can go out and boulder hard again. Some hard boulders, like Drew Ruana, who's a PhysiVantage athlete, he truly believes that the daily collagen, supercharged collagen use improves his skin remodeling and skin recovery. And there is some evidence that it does improve collagen synthesis and skin pliability and flexibility, which would be a good thing. It would potentially reduce skin wear. I'm not sure if it truly accelerates the skin recovery, but Drew thinks it benefits him significantly. But again, I don't think there's any quick fixes when it comes to the whole skin game. I think everybody's a little different based on your, moisture level, yeah, if you need to do a finger workout on a bad skin day, well, then use a wooden hangboard. Climb on wooden holds, which are more forgiving and less painful than plastic holds. There you go. Another question from the same person. Undulate. He says he undulates calories based on training intensity and volume, but don't know how much to undulate for hangboarding. Would you put yourself in a large caloric surplus from max hangs? The answer is no. If you're just doing a hangboard workout only, where you're just doing 7-second or 12-second hangs, and then you're resting for a lot, you think about the amount of time under tension during a hangboard workout is really small. It's a small percentage of the total time of the workout. If you check your heart rate, it would hardly go up. It would go up during the hang briefly, mainly because you're probably just bearing down, and when you hold breath and bear down, your blood pressure goes up and your heart rate can respond after that for a short period of time. But if you're just hangboarding, it's basically a rest day when it comes to calorie burn, to be honest. You still need protein, and you still need to obviously eat calories post-workout. But brief hangs don't even use much glycogen out of your forearms because it's an alactic type exercise. Now, if you do a long repeater workout, 7-3, 7-3 for a minute, and then you do 20 sets of that, that will get your heart rate up. That'll be more glycolytic and use more glycogen out of your forearms. It'll burn more calories than a max hang workout is. But still, the amount of muscle mass being engaged is still very small. So you're not burning calories anything like you would if you were climbing with all of your muscles, or if you're out hiking up a big hill with these large leg muscles. The more muscles engaged and the higher intensity and longer duration, the more calories you burn. And so I'm always, when I work with athletes, if they're a bouldering specialist, I explain you don't eat the same way as a big wall climber eats, that's up on a big wall for 12 hours, climbing 1,000 feet in a day and maybe hauling bags. It's very labor intensive to do big wall climbing. Whereas you go to the gym to boulder for 2 hours, or you go to the boulders to boulder for 2 hours. And unless you have a long uphill hike with a pad on your back, you're not burning a lot of calories bouldering for 2 hours, because again, you're active for 30 seconds or a minute, then you stand around for 5 minutes and rest. So that person doesn't burn anywhere near as many calories in a session or a day as someone climbing long, steep sport routes, or again, somebody climbing multi-pitch or big wall routes. And so the calories need to be adjusted appropriately. And that's why I mentioned earlier there is no one climber's diet. It's got to be personalized, just like the training program has to be personalized. And that's the one problem with a lot of the information on the internet. You click through into these articles you see coming out of the magazines or these brief little blog or Instagram posts, and they're filled with generalizations because you can't nuance a topic like this in a little Instagram post or even in a short internet article with one of the magazines that's designed to be read in 3 minutes. You just can't get to the level of nuance, and And a lot of writers and coaches aren't even really knowledgeable enough to nuance it down to the nitty-gritty details. And so just like seeking training advice, you want to get your nutrition advice from somebody who really gets it. And there are people out there that do, certainly, no doubt about it. I know, for instance, Matt Foltz, who's a PhysiVantage athlete. He's one of the top boulders in the world. He has his own training business that he and his wife, who's into nutrition, run. And when they train people, they talk, I believe, just as much about nutrition side of things as they do the training and climbing side of things, because they really do go hand in hand. Next up. Question throwing here a quote of mine: "You should always train general endurance early and strength and power endurance late." But he's questioning, what about the saying power before endurance? It depends. I mean, I don't know the context of that quote. I'm sure I said it at some point. If you are going to the gym today, or if on a Saturday you are going to the gym, and you are planning to do climbing and aerobic activity or endurance activity, if you're going to run, do it before you train, not after you train. And there's good evidence that it should be in that order. Good research that shows that, if you're going to run and lift or run and climb in the same workout, you do the running first, you do the lifting and climbing second. However, in the context of a 2-a-day workout, that's where kind of the power before endurance makes more sense. Like when I do a 2-a-day workout, I will generally do my hangboard and campus training as a single workout, strength and power, in the morning, sometime before lunchtime. And then I have a 6-hour recovery period, and I eat a meal, protein and some carbs. And then in the late afternoon or evening, do an endurance. It might be a power endurance, it might be an anaerobic or aerobic endurance exercise session. And so in that scenario, it does make more sense. I think what you don't want to do is go to the gym, and let's say you have 2 hours at the gym and you're going to try to do everything. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to do hangboarding and bouldering and campusing, and then I'm going to go do the endurance work, which would be doing some route climbing or some repeater work. That's not a good program design, because that's kind of the hit all energy systems in 1 2-hour workout, which is not an effective way to train it. It's great for creating fatigue. You'll leave the gym and feel like a badass having done all that in a 2 or 3 hour window, but it's not effective training because you're muddying the waters of the signaling that the training provides it's called the interference effect. It's not productive. You want to separate those workouts. So in summary, if you're going to separate them, do strength power bouldering early and the endurance late. And I agree with that saying. But if you're going to do some in the same session, like if you're going to run, let's say, as a warm-up, 30 minutes of running, and then do a climbing workout, that is the proper order to do things. So hopefully that makes sense for you there, Michael. Marco says, hey coach, do you have any hangboard protocol to recommend for targeting specifically the aerobic energy system? And then he asked about the beta-alanine supplement, which I already answered Marco's question about the beta-alanine, so I won't answer that. But in terms of hangboarding for the aerobic, and you want to be specific. The way I always put it is the climbing specific aerobic energy system. So we're not thinking the aerobic energy system as like a generalized system like you would get if you ran or did rowing machine or something like that. But we're talking about the climbing specific aerobic energy system that creates ATP via oxidative phosphorylation in the climbing muscles, bicep, forearm muscles, pulling muscles, core muscles. And so to target on a hangboard, it's got to be very submaximal hangs. no hangs to failure. If you're hanging to failure, then it's either alactic or anaerobic lactic. You want to be something that simulates. You want to do a hangboard workout that kind of simulates being on a moderate route where you're climbing steadily, gripping, 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 and between each grip there's blood flowing, and no grip is so hard and so long that it occludes the blood flow, and so that you do go anaerobic. You don't want that. And so you have to get on the hangboard, and for most people, either remove some weight, set up a counterweight system, clip it into your harness so that it's pulling up on you as weights pull down on the other side of a pulley, and train intermittent hangs, 7 seconds on, 3 seconds off, or some people prefer 10 seconds on and 5 seconds off, and you do a 1 minute interval of those repeaters, and then you do a 1 minute kind of shake and recovery. Your blood is flowing, recovery is ongoing, and then you're back on, and you keep going back and forth. I would start with 10 sets. That's kind of the beginners, and then more advanced would be going to 15 or even 20 sets. So if you're doing 20 sets of repeaters, where each set is 1 minute of those repeaters and then 1 minute of shaking, you're talking about 40 minutes. That's fantastic, because in that 40 minutes, you've moved a ton of blood through your system. You've consumed a lot of oxygen. The mitochondria, which are the factories that take either fats or sugars and with oxygen burn them to make ATP. So those mitochondria, those ATP factories, are cranking away and getting stronger. And so the blood flow is giving us stimulus for capillary formation. The mitochondria are getting really used steadily over 20, 30, 40 minutes, are getting a stimulus for getting bigger, because mitochondria will grow. You get more mitochondrial volume, which improves your ATP flux aerobically. Those are two of the big adaptations, but they're long-term adaptations. You can't do 1 or 2 of these workouts and expect a big change. It doesn't work that way. You can do 1 or 2 hangboard workouts and sometimes feel stronger on edges because you've recruited the nervous system. You've gotten the motor units to fire more synchronously. So you can do a brief hangboard or campus board cycle, just a couple of sessions, and feel some difference. It's not like that with aerobic training. Aerobic training is, think of the runner, the competitive runner. What do they have to do? They got to put in mileage, and there's no getting around the mileage. To be a good runner, you got to do mileage. I'm talking about a longer distance runner, like 5K, 10K, up to marathon. You need mileage. Because the mileage is what is doing all the things I just described that repeater programs do. And long days climbing at the crags, lots of mileage, 10 pitches in a day, or at the gym, 10 pitches of submaximal climbing, which when I go to the gym, I try to do that. That's one of the things I try to do in a gym. That is your climbing specific aerobic workout, and it's more comprehensive because you're using your whole body. But a hangboard obviously is just targeting your finger flexors for the most part. And so doing those repeaters, but it's got to be low enough load that you never reach failure, you never get pumped out. In fact, you should not get more than just like a moderate pump, mid-range pump. And if you kind of can meet those criteria, then you're doing a good aerobic workout. Okay, moving on here. Aiko says, I'm 38 years old, climbing 7 years now. Last year I climbed my first 7B plus, which is for American climbers 512C. His goal is 8A, which is 513B. Can I progress to that grade despite my age and the fact that I started climbing at an older age? And the answer, Aiko, I'm happy to say is yes, you can do it. A lot of factors are between you and reaching that grade. Motivation, not getting injured. 12C to 13B is a big jump, and it's not going to happen in a season. I think you could try to go up 1 letter grade a season, which would get you to 12D, or it would get you to 7C next year, then to 7C plus the next year, and then maybe to to 8A the following year. So I would set for yourself a 3-year plan. Try to make it your goal to go 1 letter grade per year. It might be tempting. What a lot of climbers do is try to stretch to that goal. So they send their first 12C or 12D, and right away they jump on an 8A, a 13B. And maybe they'll get lucky if it's a soft route or if it fits their strengths and weaknesses, they might get lucky, but more likely it's going to shut them down. And hanging on a route and failing on a route continuously doesn't make you a better climber. It's sending routes that makes you a better climber. So that's where you want to build that grade pyramid. So right now 12C is the top of your pyramid. So you want to climb a lot of routes, 7A, 7A plus, 7B, 7B plus. And then your goal in the next year is to grow that pyramid to 12D at the top, which means filling in a couple more 7B pluses, several 7Bs, maybe 10 7A pluses to build that pyramid. And as you broaden the foundation of that pyramid, as you broaden it out, naturally the peak of that pyramid goes higher, and that's how you get to 8A. Obviously you want to do your appropriate training to get stronger, to develop climbing specific endurance, optimize your body weight if that is a factor. All of those things will help you progress. And at 38, you're still young. I'm 20 years older than you, and I am still trying to put that, build that pyramid out so I can, elevate my game. So I'm sure you can too, if you have a good plan. That's the key, a good plan. You can't make it up as you go and just will it into happening. That's for sure. Okay, next up, what would you say is an appropriate weight fluctuation during a training and rest cycle in terms of a percent of total weight? That's a good question. I have that conversation a lot because, body weight is a factor. Climbing is a strength to weight ratio sport, a power to weight ratio sport. And while it's really in vogue to say, don't worry about body weight, there's more to climbing than that. Well, yes, of course. Climbing is a complex puzzle. You need to have the technique, the mental game, the climbing specific fitness, the flex. So there's a myriad of things to work on that make you a better climber. So if just weight control or losing weight is the pathway to getting better, well, then that's a flawed approach. But if you're doing everything else right, if you have a program to do everything else right, then optimizing body weight during your performance season is essential. And the best climbers, the Olympic level climbers, the people that are pushing their limits healthfully are finding an optimal body weight, not a minimal body weight, but a body weight where they are their strongest and where their strength to weight ratio is the highest. And so I could starve myself down to 150 pounds, but I'd be weak and injured, and I would be miserable. But really, and to get to the answer of your question, a vacillation of 2 or 3% of your total body weight is fine. During my off season, which I'm in now more or less, where I'm in training mode and I'm having a few more beers or a few more pastries, because that's part of life, is enjoying those types of things from time to time. I'm training hard. I'm not worried about the body weight if it goes up a few pounds. And right now I'm probably around 164, 165. But when spring season and summer season comes, if I want to climb 513C, which is, I have a project route at that level, I need to be around 160 or just maybe 159. And that's kind of as low as I'll go, because below that, the negative effects start to kick in. And I can get there healthfully by keeping my protein consumption up and just dialing back a few of the bad things that I eat, a few of the fattening foods and pleasure foods and, alcohol, the things that provide no nutritional value, but they're pleasurable. And so I just cut those out or dial those back. And I, over the course of a month, will lose a few pounds. Whatever weightlifting I'm doing in the winter, I stop that during performance season. And again, that'll take off a pound or two of muscle mass that I put on that I really don't need to climb harder, but I still benefited from the nervous system training and the connective tissue training of that weightlifting during the winter training season. So you, in your performance season, need to do things significantly different than you do in your training season, in terms of nutrition and training. You have to change things up to put you in your best condition for that performance season. And so if you go up 2 or 3% of body weight during the training block, and then that is reduced by, your weight drops down by 2 or 3%, which for most people would be 3 to 5 pounds. I think that 3 to 5 pound vacillation is fine. If you find yourself going up 10 or 15 and down 10 or 15, there may be something more unhealthy going on there. And again, it's situational. I'm not saying that, maybe that wouldn't be right for you, but I think that would be quite uncommon for many climbers to have that large of a weight change from off season to in season. Okay, a few more questions here real quick, and then I'm going to wrap this thing up here in just a few minutes. He says, do you have any issues with 2 days of maximum strength power training and a day of only aerobic training, 1,000 feet of rope climbing? So 2 days of strength power training, bouldering, hangboarding, campus boarding, system walling, and then 1 day of submaximal route climbing, which is climbing specific aerobic. He says 1,000 feet of rope climbing. I think it's a great schedule. In fact, I think maybe if there's one thing missing there, would be 1 day of lactic system training, which would be power endurance, doing like bouldering 4x4s, or one of my interval training protocols that really focuses on all-out climbing that's lasting about 1 minute. Now, maybe your bouldering days have a little bit of that, but more so, especially with system walls, people's boulder routes are only 30 seconds or less in duration. The hangboarding and campus training is only 5 or 10 seconds in duration. So that tends to be more alactic and less lactic. And so maybe getting 1 lactic session in there would be a good addition, but otherwise I like what you're doing there. Question from Laura. She says, hi Eric, so glad you're here and watching live, all ears. 41-year-old, started a few years ago and letting climbing shape my entire life. Yeah, that's cool. Climbing is life-changing, so you only discovered it in your mid-30s, and it's a really life-enriching thing for sure. I'm lucky I found it early, back in the 70s when there was very few teenage climbers. I could count on one hand, really, the teenage climbers that I knew in the United States. There was very few. But I've been able to be a climber for life, and it's a fabulous thing, as you've discovered. I'm so happy that climbing is mainstream, and that more people are finding the physical benefits, but also the mental, and I even argue spiritual benefits of being a climber. And not just indoor, but if you can venture on outdoors, then you get the full package of it all. So thank you, Laura. Another thank you there. Another thank you there. I appreciate that. I put a lot of time into what I do, and I give away a lot of free content because I'm, as a veteran climber, happy to support the climbing community around the world with all I do. And yes, I write training books that help me pay the bills, and I have my nutrition company, PhysiVantage, that if you're in America, I hope you'll check out at physivantage.com, and if you're in Europe, check out the Epic TV shop, and you can see the fantastic nutritional products. These are top of the line. You might go to Amazon and look for things that are similar. They're not similar. There are no similar products to what we are making at PhysiVantage, because ours are climber specific and they're made with premium grade ingredients. So they're definitely not the cheapest, but they are definitely the best. Question from Ying, could you comment on moderate intensity and if it holds back intermediate climbers? I am not exactly sure what you're asking me there, Ying. Comment on moderate intensity and if it holds back intermediate climbers. I'm not exactly sure what you're asking there, so in the next training cafe, maybe you can give me a little more clarity and I'll help you out there. Okay, Andy Hershey, how's it going, Andy? Do you still utilize campus boards? I do. I don't do a lot. I get, when I'm doing my strength power day, which is comprised of a long warm-up, some max hangboarding, I do a little bit of bouldering, and then if I'm feeling really warmed up and strong, I go to my campus board, and I do a little 1-4-7 laddering. I just do a couple of sets on each side. If I'm feeling really good, which is maybe once a month, I might do one set of up and downs, double dynos. Again, I'm fearful of injury, but there is value in that training stimulus that campus training provides, but I'm very cautious on what days I do that. I kind of did all of that stuff in pretty high volumes through my 30s, but then you get into your 40s and 50s, you have to really think hard. For me, the loss of a climbing season, if I get a bad injury and I lose my summer season, I never get that back. And I'm turning 58 next week. So, I want to send hard this season. And so what I would get out of some exercise that might hurt me is just the risk reward is not really there. Tony says he's using collagen powder after A2 pulley injury. It's such a game changer. This was after reading one of your documents posted a while back. Yeah, Tony, it is. And if you are purchasing vitamin C enriched and branched chain amino acid enriched collagen, well, then it's supercharged collagen, because we're the only company that makes that research-based combination. A lot of the generic collagens on Amazon that are really low priced, they're just crude generic hydrolyzed collagen that comes over on a boat from China. It's not enriched. It's not even a complete protein. So a nutritionist would say it has very little nutritional value because it's not a complete protein. Supercharged collagen, we complete it as a protein by adding some amino acids, and we add the vitamin C enrichment that makes it most bioactive for collagen remodeling and supporting stronger tendons, pulleys, extracellular matrix. There's even a new research study out in the last year or two that it accelerates the recovery from delayed onset muscle soreness and perhaps reduces delayed onset muscle soreness. So if you're someone that experiences that in your muscles, the supercharged collagen can even help you with that. So it's if there's one supplement climbers use, probably it's the supercharged collagen, but a close second would be a post-workout, high-quality whey isolate protein like the weapons grade whey. And by the way, anybody in America, if you want to purchase from PhysiVantage, you can get the full price nutrition at 15% off. Use checkout code FRIENDS15, just the word FRIENDS15, and that gets you 15% off full price nutrition. I'm happy to share that with the viewers of the Training Cafe, but don't tell anybody who's not watching, okay? That's just for you guys. Would a woman also take similar amounts of these supplements discussed? Yeah, pretty much. The collagen can be really beneficial. Of course, a lot of women take the collagen because of the research that shows it helps skin elasticity. Maybe it helps cosmetically some. It's not helping me there, I don't think too much, but a lot of people buy it for that reason. But in terms of the health benefits of collagen and whey protein, or if you're a vegan, well then the collagen's a no-go and the whey's a no-go because they're both animal-based products. But PhysiVantage, we make a super high-quality vegan protein called PowerPlex, which again, it's not just a straight pea protein like a lot of companies make. We have actually fortified it with glycine, with beta-alanine, with creatine, and so it's a much more complete protein for climber recovery and also for connective tissue recovery because of the added glycine, which is the number one amino acid that comprises our connective tissue. So if you're a vegan athlete and can't do the collagen, check out on the PhysiVantage website the PowerPlex. We're actually sold out as of last week of the PowerPlex, but we have a new production run. It should be back in the warehouse, and we have a delicious new PowerPlex flavor coming out. It's a cold brew coffee flavor. It's awesome. The plant proteins generally don't taste as good as the whey proteins because, the pea substrate is hard to flavor in good ways. But we have some decent flavors. We have a vanilla spice, we have a chocolate, and then the new cold brew coffee. And all those should be in the warehouse later this week if you're into a vegan protein or collagen alternative. So yes, and same thing with the vitamin D, absolutely. I think everybody should be, whether they're a climber or not, should be taking vitamin D. It has anti-cancer properties. It actually helps with COVID. There are people with a high vitamin D status have milder cases of COVID. There's multiple peer-reviewed studies that shows that. So the vitamin D is a must-do kind of thing. A little bit of creatine and the beta-alanine, if you're really into climbing, could be helpful as well, Jill, but I wouldn't say it's a necessity. And Connor says, happy birthday. Yes, I am a Valentine's Day baby. Thank you. I will eat birthday cake next week, even though I'm getting ready to hopefully segue into outdoor climbing season as the days get longer and the air gets warmer, but I will make exception for birthday cake, of course. Yes, Andy says about the questions. So yeah, we're streaming live on both the Facebook channel and on the YouTube Training for Climbing channel. So people can view the video and get the answers there. We don't transcribe the answers. If anybody wants to do that, transcribe the answers to these episodes after the fact, I could send you some free Fizzy Vantage. But I'm not going to pay somebody to do that when you can watch the video. Okay, I'm over an hour. Holy smokes. Let me see if I can just blow through these really fast here. Hands are numbing, Jessica says, grabbing hold sometimes. Yeah, it could be you have a mild case of carpal tunnel going on if you work at a keyboard, or if people that use their wrists a lot in a work activity. There's not a lot of evidence that climbing itself causes that, but it can compound pre-existing or other activity that causes the nerves. Numbing is a nerve condition. I suppose it could also be a pinched nerve in your neck. I would see a doctor if it gets worse. If it's something that just comes and goes very subtly and doesn't progress, then I wouldn't worry too much about it. But any physical ailment that gets worse with time or doesn't improve with time, I think you should see a physician to make sure there's not something else going on, or just to find out what you can do to correct perhaps the situation. Sergio says, how do you face a climbing day when you feel frustrated with your climbing or low? Hey, if you go back either 1 or 2 training cafes ago, I talked about that exact thing, how sometimes you arrive at the gym and don't feel good. And then you have to make a decision what you're going to do. Do you proceed with plan A, which is the full workout, plan B, adjust the workout, plan C, go home. I think plan B is the proper answer, but go back and watch the previous training cafe, and I will address that. And so I don't want to be more long-winded since I'm over my time constraints here on that one. Sergio. Bush, do you jump off boulders still? For me at 62, bouldering is a complete no-no because of hitting. Yeah, I do very little bouldering. I did 1 day of bouldering at Red Rocks when I was out there over the holiday break, and I mostly do route climbing at my age because I don't enjoy jumping off. Even at the climbing gym onto a pad, jumping off from the top of the bouldering wall hurts me. And my lower back, and so I enjoy bouldering. I just don't enjoy the jump offs. And so if I knew I could top every boulder and hike off, then I think I would do more boulders. But usually that's not an option at the gym nor outside. Yeah, I unfortunately don't do a heck of a lot of bouldering, though I do a bit on my home wall for the strength and power benefits. How important is stretching in your routine? I do, and what I recommend is, it's that lower body, that hip flexibility, the hip turnout, the high stepping, where flexibility is really important. Center of gravity positioning on 3-dimensional climbing requires a lot of turning and twisting and your legs doing different things. And so some of that is flexibility, but some of that is also the strength to get into those positions. So just doing a lot of static stretching isn't the best thing. Combining some static stretching and then also doing climbing and exercises that put you into those positions where you have to high step and stem widely. It's both about developing active movement through a larger range of motion and freeing up the connective tissues, getting a little bit of creep in them. The nervous system allows you to improve your range of motion as you show the brain you can control the range of motion. So there's a number of things that go on there, but just static stretching alone, I'm not a huge fan of doing massive doses. A little bit of stretching for mobility in your shoulders is helpful, but some people have hypermobility and they actually benefit from more stiffness. So again, it's a very personalized thing. I hate to give strict answers on that topic. Question from Neil, is the PhysiVantage collagen made in Europe exactly the same as the USA stuff? Yes, it is made in Germany. I have a manufacturer I've worked with over in Germany. I went there last fall and visited them to make sure that they could repeat and recreate the PhysiVantage collagen that we have here in the United States. And it's virtually identical. The flavor might be slightly different because that's a bit challenging to replicate the flavor profile precisely, but I think most people would not know the difference on the flavor. Right now in Europe, we just make the unflavored and the chocolate. We are beginning to develop the peach mango flavor that's hugely popular here in the United States. I'm not sure if it'll be as popular in Europe, but it's super tasty and it's super fruity, and it hides that kind of native natural collagen taste that the unflavored has very nicely. So we hope to have a third flavor available in Europe by maybe sometime this summer. But the formula and the benefits, of the product are identical in Europe. And I think I have pretty much reached the end of this podcast. I'm at, let me see what my clock says, 11 minutes after 1. Okay, maybe it's a record long Training Cafe. Well, thank you, Neil, and thank you everybody who tuned in for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And, my goal every 2 weeks is to, share my passion, my lifelong commitment to being a climber, and, bringing more people into the fold to be stronger, healthier, higher performing climbers. And if you want more reading material, visit the Training for Climbing website, visit the Training for Climbing YouTube channel for past episodes of Training Cafe or for some of the training videos that I've done over the years. And, subscribe and follow and share all this stuff with the people you climb with, and also help spread the word about PhysiVantage. I really appreciate that because that's really what is my focus these days, is growing that business, having as much of an impact on climbers and helping them be stronger, better climbers by way of performance nutrition. So you spreading the word helps that out a lot. And so that's it for this episode. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Until then, climb strong.